Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. It seems like something is happening in Crimea, the port of Feodosia. And this place is actually one of the main ports for the Russian Navy, but something was burning there, I mean this big oil depot. Let me show you some of the images that eyewitnesses filmed the last night. Here you can see the video. It's happened not far away from Beregovoe village, so Berehove if we speak in Ukrainian language, and there is definitely something on fire. That something is the big Russian oil facility, the oil storage that stores the fuel for the Russian ships as well. And still the fire continues even now while I am filming this video. It's very hard to eliminate it. At least two of the oil tanks are on fire, and there is the chance that the fire may spread even further. This kaboom of the Feodosian oil facility may influence the operation of the Russian marine fleet in entire region. You might think that those strikes doesn't really matter, but those touch the Russian logistics a lot. It's still not the Kerch Bridge, but not far away from it, so Putin got its birthday present from Ukraine. Putin turned 72, so potentially he may rule the country for quite a long time. There were rumors that he is seriously ill and sick, but we see that he is still alive. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do daily, you may join my Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available right in the video description below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. It seems like Russia lost at least temporarily one of their ships, Admiral Abukhov. Why did it happen? Well, someone sabotaged the engine of this vessel by drilling a tiny little hole in one of the pistons. So this is the hole, hopefully you can see it. And someone definitely drilled it. So because of this tiny hole, the excessive pressure was created inside the engine. In its turn, the cooling liquid went inside the engine as well, causing the severe damages to it, so the engine is no more. Russia has to dock the ship for the long-term maintenance. So probably someone drilled this hole, or maybe it happened on itself. Let's review the front lines for a moment. So there was the report that Russians crossed into Kamensk. This is the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the place where Ukraine performed the counterattack the last year, liberating those territories. The Russian channels start to share this information that they crossed kind of the wide place of the river here, and even they went to the local dacha area occupying the private households. But the thing is that there are no any proofs of their activity, they just say about it. I'm still waiting for the confirmation coming. So for now I wouldn't consider those are the real news, because the information just comes from the Russian channels. The AIM came up and said that geolocated footage shows Russian forces have advanced, but no footage is presented, like give me the proofs from the drones or something and I'll believe in that. And also, if we assume that it really happened, for Russia it would be very hard to supply their group in Plavny village, their bridgehead. It would be similar to the Ukrainian operation in Krinky, where Ukraine had to withdraw after all. But now I'm still waiting for the drone videos, so that's why it's no-go. I mean, the entire information could be fake. At the same time, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman said before, like 3 days ago, that Russia is preparing the attack in Zaporizhzhia direction. Alright, about the Kursk Oblast, we have the update in Lubinovka village. So Russia intensified their attacks. There is now a heavy fight ongoing. And definitely there was the movement yesterday. Today you may see the expansion of the Russian controlled area. Russia not just pushing to this direction, they also start to push towards this direction as well. So Ukraine is unable to move further to Glushkova. There was the attempt of Ukrainian army, but it seems like for now it is not reaching its goals. For this time, the task to encircle the Russian group between the river and the Ukrainian armed forces and the border of Ukraine, well, I would say that this task is unrealistic with the current resources Ukraine has. And we may see how Russia already takes initiative in the Kursk Oblast, unfortunately. Yesterday on my big stream I speak a lot about the Kursk Oblast, the situation in Ukraine in general on the front lines. Well, I think that Ukraine just had two of the major goals with this Kursk operation attempt. The first goal is to reach the Kurchatov, so Kursk nuclear power plant. Like Russia did in Energodar, occupying Ukrainian Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Ukraine might have done the same step for the possible exchange of two of the nuclear power plants simultaneously. The second idea was to force the Russian army to go to Kursk to protect the Russian territory and leave the ambitions to advance on the east. If that was the goal, well, it also failed. We also heard the rhetorics of the Ukrainian government that the idea of this operation was to create some sort of the gray zone, or as the other variant they say something some time to prevent the attack on the Sumy Oblast from the Russian side. I guess Zelensky said about it, but we understand that by the time of the Ukrainian strike towards Kursk, Russia was not keeping huge forces in this region. That's why Ukraine was so successful in a few days taking that vast area. Well, now Russia sent some of the reinforcements, but not from the eastern side of Ukraine. They moved some from the Kherson Oblast, and they also found the resources in Russia itself, because Russia still has more military resources compared to Ukraine. But still, I wouldn't say that this operation is the failure for Ukrainian side at this moment. No, only time in the future will show whether this move from Ukrainian side was a correct one or not. The good thing after all in the Kursk Oblast that Ukraine has tactical success and much less losses compared to last year's counteroffensive on the southern part of Ukraine. So from tactical perspective, yes, this operation was a good one. And now let's go to Pokrovsk direction. So immediately it was yesterday and it is today. We had the confirmation from the deep state military map that Russians took those fields, and also they moved over here, occupying Tsyrkina fully, and they will go southbound. It's 100%. Russians will try to encircle Ukrainian forces in all of those villages. Russians don't want to go uphill, they will go here 100%. Alright, it seems like after all Ukraine started to build some of the defense lines, well, based on the information coming from the analytics. As you may see, Ukraine has at least 2 of the defense lines before Pokrovsk. Well, this line is already in Pokrovsk, I would say, and the lines are not that robust as Russia was able to build in the south of Ukraine, and after it was the free way for Russia to advance towards Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, but here we may see that Ukraine started to build some of the lines already. A new Dnipro line is built before reaching Pavlograd. The previous Ukrainian defense lines, as you may see, were penetrated and occupied by the Russian forces. Again, I'll continue to say about it that Ukraine should have prepared in a much better way than Russia started their advancement towards Avdiivka. Ukraine should have built loads and loads of the defense lines with the engineering equipment, quite robust lines, but now I'm sure that Russia is capable to penetrate those, because those are not significantly built and they are not interconnected. So now the fight is ongoing for Selidova, and if Russia is successful out there, they may bypass all of those defense lines and strike Pokrovsk also from this side, simultaneously continue their attack straight forward. How do you know the positions of those lines? Well, basically there are some of the satellite images with a limited access of some of the analytics, and they continue to publish the information openly. But you know, I want to reassure you that Russia also knows about that stuff. They have the Chinese satellite images and they have surveillance drones flying around, so they know what is happening. But we understand that for each Russian attack, Russia has absolutely tremendous losses. And based on the calculations done by the Institute for the Study of War for the 1 whole year since Russia started their attacks on Avdiivka, Russia lost at least 1,830 units of the military vehicles. Here we speak about only a single direction where Russia lost at least 539 of the tanks and 1020 BMPs and BTRs, so the supply vehicles, light vehicles are not included in these statistics. Just tanks and infantry vehicles, and the number is just astonishing. The 80% of all of those losses are unrecoverable. And for the whole year, Russia was able to occupy around 1,000 square kilometers. That's what Ukraine was able to get from the Kursk Oblast in a few days. So for Russia to conquer the whole Donetsk Oblast, they need to waste their entire army, and we see that they have less and less volunteers. For example, in Belgorod Oblast, now there is a new contract benefit for 3 million rubles. So just sign the contract with the Russian army and you'll obtain 3 million rubles. It is $31,500. Just imagine this huge number for the ordinary Russian man. So if Russia raises the stakes that high, it means that they are really in need of the soldiers. And they also don't want to announce a new massive mobilization. Here we have a very interesting graph for the years. So the first year of the war, the second year of the war, and the third one. This number over here is the record high, and it's the daily losses for the particular months. Daily average losses. So average Russian losses for September, the last month, is 1,271. And this is the absolute record since the beginning of the war. We may see the escalation of the war, that Russia is using all of the available resources to get as much ground as possible right here, right now before November's elections in the United States. Why is it so important? Because Russia thinks that it may freeze the war, it may have a break for a couple of years to reform its army and attack Ukraine once again. Yesterday, Russians also tried to attack Ukrainian forces near Zolota Niva village, and a Russian convoy was repelled by Ukrainian defenders. Here you may see many of the Russian vehicles. The video I will share on my Telegram channel. It was presented by the Deep State military map source. Today, the Slovak Prime Minister Fico spoke with the Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, and they discussed the energy infrastructure plus the Ukrainian NATO and EU membership. So Slovakian Prime Minister said that they do not support Ukrainian membership in NATO and will oppose that, but they do think that Ukraine should be the member of the European Union. As for me, the European Union is not that important compared to NATO. And later on, Fico called to bomb Brussels. Literally, he said that Brussels should fill the missiles if they want to support Ukraine with a long-range weaponry. Some kind of the strange rhetorics, I would say even harder than Putin's. It's the level of Dmitry Medvedev. Fico is rising in the eyes of the Russian regime. This is the Abrams tank that was provided to Ukraine, actually many of those tanks that were modernized by Ukraine, so now they have the drone protection plus the extra armor protection Contact 1. It potentially could save the tank from the drone strike, so that's why Ukraine is using that armor. Somehow the fire happened in a Moscow high-rank military facility. Some say that it was a drone strike which happened during the night time. So there was no one inside, just the building was damaged and probably ruined. A Russian Z blogger Yegor Guzenko, who is known as 13, is facing the trial now, and he is located in the prison. He's been detained by police and he potentially may face 5 years in prison because, as prosecution said, he beaten some of the Russian police officer. 13 is a classical Russian Nazi. He was really against the Ukrainians as the people. And also he doesn't like Chechens. Maybe that is why he's now in a prison. Well, in general, the story is good for Ukraine. After all, well, recently the Russian defense minister Belousov called many of the Russian influencers, mostly military bloggers, and he explained them that there should be a censorship. But where would Russians seek for some sort of the information? They'll try different channels, because there is a great part of the population which doesn't trust the official Russian news, so they'll seek for the news maybe even from Ukrainian side. Also, we know that Ukraine created or will create many of the pro-Russian looking channels, but there Ukraine shares its own views. So actually there's the information of war ongoing, and I'm also the part of this information of war as the influencer who supports Ukraine and speaks in favor of the country. You probably remember this Russian guy. His name is Viktor But, and he is a gun smuggler. He was exchanged from the American prison, and America got a basketball player. So according to the information from the Wall Street Journal, Viktor But is getting back to business. He is now supplying the ammunition widely to Hamas, Hezbollah, to Houthis, and so on. They also rely on intelligence services of the Western countries sharing this information. So now his business will bring more devastation, and why he was exchanged after all for a basketball player. I mean, I would like that basketball player to come back to the United States, but the ratio of the exchange is unbelievable. It seems like Putin decided to get rid of his personal residence in Sochi. Well, it happened because he doesn't want this residence to be hit by Ukrainian drones, so the residence is no more. This is the photo before and this is after. Or maybe they're just rebuilding the entire complex from the scratch. They ruined the building and now they want to build something new. There are two ways. The ex-deputy of the Russian defense minister Shoigu, who was arrested and now in the Russian prison, is being accused for the money laundering and for taking lots of the funds from the Kerch ferry project. So Russia built some of the ferries, and the deputy of minister decided to earn something, and I'm sure that Shoigu is also involved in this scheme. As we see, Putin together with FSB tries to clean the Russian military from bribes, but the system itself is corrupt. So no matter who is in charge, but the system will not work properly. And the reason for it is just because Putin wants to see loyal people in charge, not professionals. The first criteria is the own guy, whom he may trust. And we have awesome news from Netherlands. They sent some of the F-16s to Ukraine. They do not specify the number, but they say that 24 more jets will follow the coming months. So soon Ukraine will get enough F-16s to operate them on the front line. Sometimes I get the questions of why Ukraine operates F-16s away from the real front lines and they are used just for defense of the civilian cities, well, Ukraine needs lots of those airplanes to counteract to the highest threat from the Russian Air Force. Because the modern-day Russian fighter jets are more advanced compared to F-16s, that's why Ukraine needs lots of the F-16s to conquer the Russian aviation. At least it's the usual strategy of the United States if they use F-16s in the battles. They use them a lot against the enemy which has less units. So my friends, with that saying, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. As usual, I wish you a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.